Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by the Active Archive Alliance. It is our annual Active Archive Alliance virtual conference. The subject today is effective data management through active archives. I'm Bob Cohn, and I will be your co-chair of the Active Archive Alliance today, along with Rich Gadomski. And as we advance that slide, Meredith, I think it will bring that up. Rich, we've got a really good virtual conference set up for everyone today. Would you say a couple of words about the Active Archive Alliance itself?
I will, and thanks very much for your introduction. Great to be here today, Bob. So the Alliance was founded back in April of 2010. The Alliance promotes simplified online access to all of your data throughout its product lifecycle or its data lifecycle. The Alliance aligns education and best practices to meet the requirements for data management and archive in today's modern environments. And in fact, our tagline is modern strategies to solve data growth challenges. So that's really what it's all about. And I think what you'll hear from our members today. And on the next slide, I'll turn it over to you, Bob, for the overview.
Yeah, so if that's the Active Archive Alliance and its goals, what you're looking at here is a picture of what is an active archive. And from the 40,000 foot view, it incorporates data management software, it incorporates hardware. The goal is to make sure that the right data is at the right place at the right time. And in order to do that, many different members have come together with their various solutions, again, both software and hardware, to assure that data can flow more fluidly and freely to accomplish that task of being at the right place at the right time when you need it. So that is the movement of what an active archive is all about. And what you will see is that we have many members within the Alliance that bring that together. And Rich, back to you to say a couple of words about that.
Yeah, so this slide shows the current membership, most of whom are here today. And I want to thank all of our members who are participating today and who have really produced some great content. I think our audience will find it very educational. So with that, I'd like to now I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's conference, and that is Drew Robb. Drew is an IT writer and consultant. The name of his company is Robb Editorial. And in terms of bio, all you need to know is Drew has been doing this for 27 years, a very long run, very successful run. You'll see him in a lot of industry publications and occasionally on late night TV. So with that, I'll turn it over to Drew.
All right. Thanks, Rich and Bob. Good to speak to you all today. So let's go over the agenda for today's event. So we have a guest speaker to kick things off, which is John Monroe of Furthur Market Research. He'll be talking about archiving and accessing the Dataverse. And session one is access, active archive use cases. Session two, benefits of an active archive. And session three, emerging trends. And there'll be various speakers for each of these sessions. Now, at the end of each session, there'll be a short time for Q&A if we have any questions and as time permits. And you'll see down the bottom of the screen there's a place where you can enter a question in the Q&A box. All right, so let's go on to the first speaker. So our guest speaker today is John Monroe, and he's from Furthur Market Research. John has been involved with the storage industry for more than 40 years, including 25 years as an analyst at Gartner. So take it away, John.
Fine, next slide. So my subject is archiving and accessing the Dataverse, this huge thing that I spend, a good portion of every day trying to imagine what it's made up of, how big it is, and how it's evolving. And one thing I think for sure, which is sort of a tagline and a theme that can be used as a footnote to every single slide, and really most of everything that I'm writing and thinking about now, that the cost of managing this damn thing, which is already multi-million-fold petabytes, are going to increasingly lengthy time periods, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, are going to create new uses for old technologies and demand the creation of new, more power efficient and cost effective technologies. Now, how big is this thing? Well, I think the immensity of this cold yet active archive is going to reach around 30 zettabytes in 2030, and probably 50 zettabytes or thereabout in 2050, 2035. The total shipments in a disastrous year were 1.3 zettabytes last year, and about 900,000 of that, 950,000 of that was hard drives. It was an incredibly bad year, historically the worst year ever we've seen in terms of petabyte growth for the growing enterprise archive. I doubt we'll see that kind of year again, although Flash is probably going to be down another 30% this year. So I've massively changed my new forecast because of this reset that we've had that's unexpectedly hugely bad year in 2022. Now, despite that, we still saw an effective doubling of the active installed base to around 5 zettabytes last year. Next slide, please. So one thing that is obvious as to why this thing is growing at the rate that it is that we have billions and billions of people and systems and sensors connected in a global network, creating this global dataverse. And they have generated and will continue to generate immense quantities of data. So the data lakes that we're talking about in 2010, they were actually data pools at the turn of the century. They became data oceans in recent years, and now it's a huge multi-million-fold dataverse. Now, why is it out there? Why are we having to access it? Well, increased storage at any point in the web, bear in mind that a mobile phone is a point in the web, is going to increase the possibilities for storage in every part of the web. And I firmly believe we're just barely beginning to see the enormous implications of that simple fact. Next slide, please. Well, the agenda is I'm going to give you some shipment history and new forecast, go to fresh delineations of enterprise data, look at the evolving active archive, and come to some usual inconclusive conclusions. Now, before I embark on any forecast, I always ask myself, whether the past going to be prologue or is history going to be bunk? We don't know. We do not yet know what we do not know. And that's always the case. And I always ask myself, with these precautionary adages in mind, the only thing we know with certainty about any forecast is that it's going to be wrong. And he who foretells the future lies, even if he tells the truth. Next slide, please. Well, here's my current lies, which I came up with last month. Some of you are familiar with this and have already seen it. We know what happened from 2010 through 2022. We can only guess what's going to happen 2025 to 2030, and even out there now to 2035. I do have this by year all the way through out to 2035, and I'd be happy to share that spreadsheet with all attendees, Meredith, at the end here. So in terms of where my current thinking and how it's changed, because we have this big reset, and also because I think we're going to run into some manufacturing limitations for both flash and hard drives, I believe we're only going to grow to about 8 zettabytes delivered in 2030, as opposed to 10 or 12 zettabytes. And we may only get to 12 zettabytes in 2035. I seriously doubt the flash industry can produce much more than 1.5 zettabytes of storage wholly dedicated to the enterprise. Hard disk drives, I think, can certainly grow beyond 5, but will they? I think everyone's looking, certainly all the drive makers, all 3 of them that we have left, are going like, maybe underproducing is not such a bad idea, because surplus always leads to disastrous consequences, and allocation always leads to profits. So in any case, and you look at these divided now, and I'm also introducing a new category, which I'm calling photonic other. It could be called particle storage, otherwise known as optical. Can it grow as fast as I've given it credit for? I don't know. Can tape grow a lot faster? Maybe. But in any case, of that 8 zettabytes total delivered, certainly something like 2 zettabytes should be dedicated to something other than flash and hard drives, which are consuming far too much energy and consuming far too much power at a far too great a cost per gigabyte comparatively to what the needs actually are and how they're evolving. So when I say enterprise petabytes, I'm looking exclusively here at only the petabytes that are shipped on enterprise-grade flash, SSDs, and enterprise-grade hard drives. And of course, tape has really only enterprise-grade. Next slide, please. Now, what's this looking like as we move forward? I'm assuming a 5-year refresh replacement cycle. It's actually more like 3 years for flash because it's pounded on so hard in enterprise applications. 5 years for hard disk drives. It's more like 7 years plus for tape. So the evolving active archive requirements, I think, are going to be about 60% of all these zettabytes. And that pool will be growing towards about 30 zettabytes in 2030. The active installed base, as I've already indicated last year, was about 4.8 zettabytes. And that, despite we had the horrible year of 2022, that was only 2.9 zettabytes in 2020. So in 2 years, it's almost double. Next slide, please. Now, recently I've come up with more delineations of data based on access frequencies. From hot, which is nanoseconds to milliseconds, to warm, which is milliseconds to seconds, to cool, which is minutes to 24 hours, to cold, which is 25% days to weeks, and frozen, weeks to years. Now, the change here is that I think the hot, warm data layers are shrinking from about 25% to only about 20%. I think the cold and frozen layers are increasing from about 30 to 35%, and the cool layer probably stays about the same at 20%. Now, what's certain is that most of this stuff that's out there is going to be just in case or write once, read never data. But because we believe data is the new oil, we're creating more and more stuff, and we're throwing less and less of it away. So that bottom invisible portion of the iceberg is going to reach just enormous sizes, and it's going to require everything we can throw at it to manage it effectively. Next slide, please. No, I think most folks would be aware of this stuff. It was a little bit surprising to me, but last year I had the good graces to be able to be in contact with some folks that are managing very large databases, 50 petabytes to 500 petabytes. Now, 500 petabytes, as we all know, that's big. However, that's only a very tiny fraction of what was shipped, 1.3 zettabytes last year. So one thing that all these folks had in common was the data retention period was indefinite in all cases. We're keeping everything for as long as for indefinable lengths of time. Now, my own modest contribution to the more than numerous three-letter acronyms this industry has to deal with is SIS, security, immutability, and sustainability. And these are all increasingly crucial concerns. The growing majority of this data was, in fact, cold by their own definition. But depending upon access frequency and access request, it could become hot at any time. Therefore, in other words, 100% of their data is an active archive. And I think it's largely true for most organizations as we speak now, and probably going to be even more true in the future. Next slide, please. Now, what is an active archive all about? It's all about digital preservation and access. And the concerns, not necessarily in this order, are fairly common. High capacity, ultra low cost, rugged durability despite perhaps challenging, potentially terrible atmospheric conditions, guaranteed readability over extended time periods. That's becoming more and more of a concern. How do you future-proof this stuff? How are you going to read it 25 years from now? Minimal power draw sustainability, and that could be the most crucial purchasing decision in the coming years. We're really running out of space and energy, and something has to be done about it. Ease of access, certainly that is what this group is all about. And again, really crucially, offline air-gap secure immutability. All aspects of the original data absolutely must remain unchanged. Next slide, please. So first of inconclusive conclusions, this is not going to be a binary, elegant, either or scenario. It's not going to be all hot or all cold. There will be, I believe, fine delineations in between there. There's going to be not either or, binary 0, 1, but both and. We're going to do everything all the data centers of the future are going to require everything, the hard disk drive, solid state drive, tape, and photonic other storage technologies can throw at it. To do what? To cost effectively and reliably preserve and access the priceless artifacts of our personal, corporate, and cultural history. Now, as I think we're all keenly aware, and I think we're going to hear some pretty good solutions to these questions, availability and sustainability challenges are going to create a global need for autonomic data systems. We've been trading about that stuff for 25 years now, but we haven't yet to create them. But what this alliance is all about and what these companies are all about is truly creating autonomic data systems that can provide intelligent active archive management and seamless migrations of hot to warm to cool to cold to frozen data and back again, from core to edge to cloud. And one aspect of the Dataverse that is never going to change is that computers come and go, but data remains and it grows. And I foresee the future uses of our storage technologies as an enlargement of the library of forms in which data, unleashed in fresh dimensions, can come to profitable life. And when I say profitable, I hope that there's going to be more good coming out of that Dataverse than evil, although there surely is a bunch of evil lurking out there. And profitable in the sense that all these companies that are gathered here today, you're going to have to make money in terms of dealing with the data that is generated out there and the technologies that you create to provide solutions to challenges that all customers will be facing. Thank you very much. That's all I have. I'm certainly willing to answer a few questions should anyone have any.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that, John. I like the part about data centers of the future needing everything, flash, disk, and tape, because too often there's a climate of one versus the other. So good to hear that.